Okay, so we're talking about the interview being the most difficult part of the journey. And we discussed this important aspect of equipping, preparing for that journey. And so, just in case it wasn't clear, we wanted to share some research about how difficult this journey really is for someone like Samina Beg. She says in an interview that her goal was to complete the 7 summits over a span of just several months rather than several years. And the person interviewing her was really surprised. How can you do this in just several months, not several years that most people do? And she said, Samina responded, out of, say, 100 mountaineers, perhaps only one may attempt 7 summits in this style, which is to say that she was really trying to do something that seemed impossible. I mean, the more you dig into her story, the more you realize how amazing this accomplishment really was. And then she goes on to talk about Mount Everest. And she says, by the way, many people die on the mountain, Mount Everest, every year. In fact, it has a death toll of about 10% yearly. That means that if 10 people try and hike Mount Everest, if 10 of you tried to hike Mount Everest, one of you would die. And if all 30 of us went, then at least 3 of us would die, which is pretty extreme, but also pretty shocking to realize that Samina Beg really did something extraordinary. And not only was she the first female Pakistani to climb Mount Everest, but also she was only the 3rd Pakistani ever to climb Mount Everest, which means in the entire history of the world, from what we know, only 3 people have done what she has done, which is crazy to think about. And so we could really learn a lot from her. As we saw in the video, this is an epic journey, and you are all on epic journeys as well. And so the question that we are hopefully asking is, how did she do it? How did Samina achieve such an epic journey? And as you have some idea already, as we've already suggested, she did it through preparation. She was equipped. She was ready. And so here's some research that Adnan has done, which is really digging into more about her preparation. She says in her blog and in a series of interviews, oftentimes it's more mental preparation than physical preparation. But of course there is physical preparation also. She goes on to say, most of the time we study the mountain and its physical conditions, and then we plan our climb accordingly. Does this sound familiar at all? Any relationship to interviews? You should be thinking about this. The third thing she says is we prepare ourselves mentally for the situation we would be going through. And when mentally strong, we work out physically to prepare for physical challenges. Right? So remember in the interview we talked about on this first bullet point, mental preparation, how to manage the stress, what kind of activities or exercises, breathing exercises you can do beforehand to be mentally prepared so that you can show your passion, so that you can show that you're really excited about this and you can be comfortable, make a good first impression. Second bullet point, she's talking about studying the mountain and its physical conditions. Does that sound familiar? She's doing research. She's studying the mountain like you would study a company. And she's studying the physical conditions like you would study the physical conditions of that company or their competitors or the industry or the position. And then she plans accordingly, just like you plan your interview accordingly. You come up with your 3 stories, right? Or your 4 stories or your 5 stories. You come up with the questions, the 5 cues you want to ask. You come up with some ideas about how you want the interview to go, and you plan your climb accordingly. You plan your interview accordingly. And then the third point, prepare yourself mentally and then physically. And remember, we talked about the physical preparation for the interview, like how to dress, how to do the handshake, how to make the good eye contact, have the good body language, etc. Okay, so then Samina goes on and talks about some more preparation, specific kind of skills. You have to learn the necessary skills and techniques to climb mountains. And when it comes to using modern equipment, that requires lots of training as well. And then she goes on to say, to protect from extreme cold and wind chill, you need snow goggles, crampons, special climbing shoes, mittens, balaclava, which I have no idea what it is, warm caps, and of course supplemental bottle oxygen because they're going in such high altitudes. So here she talks about two things. Top right, she talks about you have to have the necessary skills and techniques. And you have to have training to know how to use the equipment, which is really what Amal Fellowship is all about, right? We're developing skills, we're developing techniques, and we're giving you the modern equipment, but we're also training you on how to use it, right? Times have changed. You need to know how to use the modern equipment, and so this preparation, this getting equipped is really important. And then the last point she makes here is talking about the physical equipment that you need. And so this again goes to any ideas? What kind of equipment do you need to bring on your interview? Well, you need to bring your cover letter. You need to bring your resume. You need to bring your professional attire. You need to dress professionally. And then you need to follow up afterwards. Send the thank you email. These are all tools that you should be bringing to your interview.